It's May tomorrow.
We've got about a minute.
What'd you say, Casey? Be about 30?
That's kind.
Exactly, I agree.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the April 30th, 2025 Town of Kill Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. Unfortunately, Commissioner McAvoy is not available to be with us tonight. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's enter a moment of silence. All right. Our next item of business is agenda approval.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We have an agenda. Next, we have our first public comment session tonight. Now's the time set aside for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the board on any topic of their choosing that pertains to the town. We ask that when you're called upon to approach the podium, speak into the microphone, identify yourself by name and address. 3 minutes for an individual and 5 minutes on behalf of a group. And I will remind everybody, we'll have our public forum later this meeting, which will be a more open and casual time to have a discussion with the board. Would anybody like to approach the podium and speak at our first public comment period? All right. Seeing no takers, we'll move on. No response needed, so we'll move on to introductions and presentations. Item number 1, Trash Attack Community Cleanup Event and Poster Contest Recognitions. Time to have some fun. All right. Sandy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, everyone. My name is Sandy Markland, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Trash Attack Chair. I was also the judge for the poster contest, but please don't hold that against me. I'm sure that you saw the trash truck and the 2 trash containers outside with the reproductions of the posters on them. It is such a treat to see those. I think as if I had anything like that when I was a kid, I would have been over the moon. Trash Attack is an annual event. We do it every spring to get our town ready to go for the tourist season. And we depend on volunteers to come in and help us collect litter throughout the town. We took kind of a hit in the time of COVID, but we have finally built back up to a great complement of volunteers showing up. Our trash collection this year was 21 cubic yards total and 1 mattress. The cubic yards are on par with the trash collection that we did last year. We did fall a bit behind in bulk pickup. Last year we had 5 tons. This year we had a mattress. That, however, is not bad news. It's very good news indeed. A lot of people remarked that there really wasn't a whole lot of trash out there. So we're doing something right, and yay for that. The town of Kill Devil Hills is blessed not only with a lot of citizens who are willing to devote their time to the town, but a board of commissioners, a mayor, and town staff who come out on Saturday morning in the spring and contribute a great deal to this event. So thank you so much to everyone for that. I cannot tell you how much it means to have the support of a town like this. Mayor Windley and Commissioner Hykins once again this year hit upon the bonus trash location.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you for that. And we can't wait to see what you find next year.
Me too.
We are also blessed with participation from community partners. And this year, our community partners were the KDH Front Porch Cafe that provided coffee and all the attendant condiments for our early morning arrivals. Harris Teeter, KDH, provided the delicious pizza for everyone when we finished up. And Kelly's Catering provided the awesome ham biscuits that we get each year. So now what everyone has been waiting for are our poster contest honorees. Each year we do the poster contest. And this year we had really awesome entries. And it was very, very difficult for the judges to pick the winners because they really are all incredibly good at getting our point across. So I'm going to be assisted this evening by Charlene Allen. And when you hear your name called, come on up to the podium, get your certificate and your gift bag, and then go stand by your poster. Okay? If you can't find your poster, we'll help you. There are 5 up front and there are some back here. All right. Is everybody ready? Are you ready? Okay. Enzo Piacenza. Are you here, Enzo? Okay. Samuel Ball. Come on up. Yes, please. Irie Elder. Okay. Dylan Wood. Oliver Piacenza. Malachi Elder. And now the top 3 posters. Our third place poster, which is featured on one of the garbage can frames, which are out front today. They were at Aviation Park for the event, and I think that's where they will live. Okay. Is Harper Wood. Our second place poster entry, whose poster is also featured on one of the garbage can frames, is Ezekiel Elder. And our first place in the poster contest, and that poster is on this trash truck out here, which, by the way, is Miss Darlene's trash truck. All the neighborhood dogs in Avalon and other neighborhoods love our Miss Darlene. And that would be Andrew Ball. Congratulations to all the great artists. You guys did an awesome job this year. And now we're going to get a photo with all of the artists and the Board of Commissioners and me.
Great.
Just lift the. We can have the board in the back, and we'll put our poster folks in the front. Would you mind standing right here in front of me here? Right there. I'll scooch on in. I mean, let's stand right there in front of his feet. Come on.
Stand in front of everybody.
That's all right. He's very tall. Yeah, scoot on in.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gray will find you, I promise.
Can they see you?
Sandy, would you mind scooting in just a smidge? Thank you. Everybody looking at me? Dylan, look. Commissioner.
Which one there's two? Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you all.
Good job, buddy. Nice job. Sorry. No, stop. You're gonna slide up. Am I looking? I want
Okay, well, thank you, Sandy, and thank you to all of our poster participants and everyone who came out to be a part of and to support Trash Attack. I want to thank staff particularly because the last 2 years in a row I've had to dial the SOS signal to beg for help because I found kind of the honey spot of garbage to clean up. So I thank you for everyone who kind of came out for a quick response to help us address what we found. We will move on to the second item under introductions and presentations.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And I'd hate to have to follow up the Trash Attack presentation. That was that was fun. So we move on to our workforce manpower study and comprehensive pay and classification study presentation.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we have represented from Piedmont Triads Regional Council, Mr. David Hill, who's going to present the findings of the study. And if the board concurs at the end of his presentation, we'd like to recommend that the board authorize the manager to provide the funding for the study in the recommended budget for fiscal year 25-26. Mr. Hill, David.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Debbie. I am David Hill, management analyst with Piedmont Triad Regional Council. That's the Council of Government in the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area, serving the 75 local governments in that geographic area. I'm also a part of 6 retired local government employees who work for PTRC, but work all across the state. And most of us are retired. Well, about half of us are retired from a county government. I retired from Caldwell County. The other half are municipal government retirees. I do a number of presentations during this time of year. Most of the time, my voice holds up okay. Sometimes it does not. If my voice begins to fade, just give me a signal, and I've got a bottle of water here that'll help me out. So I'm going to stand before you and present information over the next 30, maybe 45 minutes that is the culmination of about 6 months worth of work. And I stand before you this evening only because of the assistance I've received, not only from Debbie and Charlene, but from department directors and more importantly from employees. Because I could not conduct the study that you expected of me without the participation of your employees. So I'm about to bore you to death with a PowerPoint. And we're going to take a look at a bunch of slides and graphs and a bunch of information, but the expected outcomes, the number one bullet was to identify the geographic market positioning of the town. And to then come with you with recommendations that support the town's employee recruitment and retention initiatives. And then secondary to the pay and classification study was a workforce staffing study that we did, and we took a look at the present and up to the upcoming 3 to 5 year period. I first will talk about the pay and class study. And then the first bullet that you're looking there is, of course, the identification of the market, and we'll take a look at that slide in a couple of moments. But who are those competitors? But to begin with, in this room, we conducted employee kickoff sessions. That was an opportunity to meet with employees, talk to them about the study, talk to them about our expectations of them as part of the study. Part of that expectation was that each employee would complete a 12-page position description questionnaire. That's 12 pages of employees telling us in their own words in great detail, even percentage of time that they spend in each of the activities that make up their unique position. During all of that time, I met individually with department directors. And then after we reviewed the 12-page questionnaire, we did meet with a representative group of employees to talk to them further about their position. While all of that was going on, we were collecting workforce data from the local governments. Again, we'll take a look at those in just a moment. And there's where we began the analysis of all of that data. And then we began to make those comparisons of Kill Devil Hills positions to similar positions in those other local governments. And I will always refer to all of those other similar positions. There are no two positions in the state of North Carolina exactly alike. If we can get about an 85% match of those primary duties and responsibilities, that's about as close to apples as you can get. So then we developed preliminary findings, preliminary recommendations, came back and met with Debbie and Charlene, worked through the preliminary findings and recommendations, continued to refine that data, work with that data. And then I presented 3 reports. Most of the information that I'm going to talk to you tonight about is just a summary of the information that appears in those 3 separate reports. The very detailed information of what I'll talk about tonight is contained in those reports. But if you do have any questions as I begin to talk about any of those areas, I'd be glad to talk to you about that. And then the last component, the last part of tonight's presentation will be the workforce staffing analysis. At the beginning of the study, Charlene sent me a workforce spreadsheet containing all of the information that is public about each of your employees. I have a printout that contains their name, their department, their position title, their employment date, the date that they were placed in their current position, their salary, their pay grade, all of the information that North Carolina general statutes say is public. I then take that information and develop some preliminary benchmarking data, and that will appear in some bar graphs that we're going to take a look at. But I first want you to take a look at standard deviation, because that is that's my view of a workforce. My definition of a mature workforce is you have an average years of employment between 8 and 10 years. And if you have a mature workforce, and if the sample size is large enough, I should be able to find 2/3 of your employees in the middle 1/3 of that bar graph, the bell curve. When we take a look at the slides, I need for you to keep that bell curve as the backdrop to that. I have a technical inability to recreate a bell curve. My bell curves look more like St. Louis arches. Sometimes they do. But in this particular slide, what you're looking at, and now this is a snapshot of your workforce at the beginning of the study. This is data from August. What you're looking at in this bar graph is for each of those calendar years. Those bars represent the number of employees who are working with you. What you don't see there, and the information I do not have available to me, is the total number of employees who came to work in each of those calendar years. But what you do see is a pretty good distribution of length of employment. Now, what I'm going to say to you next, not only the mayor and each of the commissioners, Debbie, Charlene, department directors, employees, in all of the studies that we do across the state of North Carolina, the average years of service, the average years of employment is about 6. Your average years of employment is 12.2. So that's something that the town, the elected officials, management, all of you should be very proud of that. When I look at this chart for most other local governments, all of the high bars are on the far left side, very few bars as you go across the right. That my St. Louis Arch represents a 20-year career. You can see the number of employees that you have who've been working here greater than 20 years. Well, but just like most other local governments, you do have some high bars over on the left side, but for the most part, you've got an extremely beneficial distribution of employee dates. The next thing I take a look at is how long have they been in their current position? And again, here's one of my measuring points that, again, your average years of employees in their current position is almost 8 years. Again, double what I typically see in the state. Typically, the length of employment in current position is about 4 years. So again, you've got my St. Louis Arch 20-year career, but your average length of employment in current position is right at 8 years. Because of your average length of employment, and because of a lot of good things that management has with support from elected officials, what you're looking at in this bar graph is the distribution of employee salaries. Now, in the bell curve, in a mature workforce. I should be able to find 2/3 of your employees in that highest point of the bell curve. But because of your extremely high length of employment, efforts that the town has made to establish and administer salaries, you can see that your average employee salary is 27% above minimum. Now, your salary grade range is 55%, from the very entry-level salary to the maximum salary. So the midpoint, or what's better called the market value of a position, is found at the very center of that 55% range. You can see that most of your employees are located over on the far right side. You have a number of employees whose salaries are at the maximum for their salary grade range, or within 2% of being at the maximum. That's that highest bar on the right side that you see. And then you can see the distribution of salaries across, and that's an excellent distribution. Typically, again, what I see is salary compression, with most salaries compressed within usually less than 10% above minimum. Again, your average salary is 27% above minimum. So then the next thing that we'll take a look at is just a representative sample of what does the market look like compared to your positions. Now, I have chosen one of your classifications, and to measure or compare, I've compared each of your positions to those similar positions in these local governments. Now, when you see the charts comparing the two local governments from Virginia, Virginia has a different public records law than the state of North Carolina does. They will provide to us salary grade ranges, position titles. They will provide to us all the information except specific employee salary. In North Carolina, public records provide that employee salaries are public. So when we look at the data, there will be no employee salaries showing for the Virginia local governments. So the example we're going to look at is facilities maintenance specialist. And what you see above the blue line is the market. So for this particular classification, and each one of your positions, each one of your classifications has a worksheet that looks just like this, whether that's firefighter, whether that's police officer, whether that's town manager. Every one of your positions has a comparison, and this is our basic comparison worksheet. What we capture here is what pay grade range do those other local governments have that similar position. And then coming across the column titled salary is where they provide to us the actual salary or the average salary if there are two or more employees in that position. And then the next three columns are just a couple of the different measurements of salaries and salary grade ranges that we look at. We measure how far above the minimum salary are the actual or average salaries. The title, or the column titled CR, stands for comp ratio. I'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. And then the range is merely measuring how far is it from the minimum salary to the maximum salary. So everything above the blue line is the market. Immediately below the blue line is your pay grade range, and the average salary of employees in this particular classification. So then immediately below that I take the average, I measure against the average of the market, I measure against the median of the market. And then you can see that the actual salary grade range, you're about 0.2% above the average and 2.3% below the median. And then if you come over to the salary, I'm looking at two different things here. Where is the position? Where is that market competitive position for this position to be in? And in your study, we spend about 85% of our time focused solely on positions without regard to individual employees, because the most important part of that process is the determination of what pay grade range we would assign a position to. So when we look at the actual individual salary for this classification, the average salary for employees here in this particular position is 12% greater than the market and 4.3% greater than the median. The grayscaled column, the 3% column. So for each of those local governments for this particular position, the information that you're seeing above the blue line is current data. But what I do then is create this grayscaled column, and I am forecasting that the current data at the beginning of next fiscal year will increase 3%. Now, 3% is just an average of information that I've been able to collect. So then I take a look at where's the current information, where's the forecasted information, and then make a determination on what pay grade each position should be assigned. Now on here, you can see that this position currently is in grade 5. My recommendation is this position go to grade 13. That is not a grade movement from 5 to 13. My recommended pay grade ranges that we'll take a look in a couple of minutes has a different numbering scheme. Basically, I'm saying this position is in a good position and should stay in the pay grade that it is currently assigned to. So this is just a sample of the market ranges, salaries, different measurements, and how I go about making my initial recommendations regarding pay grade assignments. So the pay plan, your current pay plan, begins with what's known as a hiring rate, and then moves to a minimum, and then each grade range has a midpoint and a maximum. Across the state of North Carolina, hiring ranges used to be a pretty prevalent and popular part of pay grade ranges. But because of the market, because of competition, what the pay grade range, it's actually set at a 5% less than the market minimum. And that typically is used to bring a new employee to work at a salary 5% less than the minimum. And then when they successfully complete their probation period, then their salary gets advanced to the minimum. Of those local governments that you saw on that slide, only 2 of those continue to use a hiring rate. Nags Head does, Manteo does, in addition to yourself. My recommendation in the next slide is that we eliminate the hiring rate. And again, that's primarily because of competition. Most local governments are looking at every initiative to bring employees to work at the minimum or higher up in their pay grade ranges. So eliminating the hiring rate puts, in my opinion, puts your pay grade or your pay plan in a better market competitive position. So my proposed plan basically is your current plan with the elimination of the hiring rate. My recommended grade 11 is your current grade 3. So what I did was I brought that minimum salary from grade 3, brought it over to be the beginning salary of grade 11. I then am recommending that your pay grade ranges become a 60% range. Currently, you're at 55%. Primary reason for that is that bar graph showing salary distributions where you've got a considerable number of employees whose salaries are already at maximum or close enough to maximum. Extending your pay grade range, eliminating the hiring rate, extending your pay grade ranges an additional 5% provides some opportunity for salary movement for those employees who currently are at the top end of the salary grade range. So recommendations. Compa ratio. Compa ratio is merely a relative position of where my salary is in relation to the midpoint of my grade range. The midpoint, a better terminology for the midpoint is market value, market rate. The midpoint of a salary grade range is where you would expect to find the average salary of employees who've been in their particular position in that 8 to 10 year period. So my recommendations are, first of all, to adopt my recommended new pay plan, and then to assign each of your positions to the pay grade in the proposed pay plan that is supported by the market data. The position we looked at currently in grade 3 would, or grade 5 would move to the new grade 13. And then establish employee salaries utilizing, again, a Compa ratio model that recognizes an employee's length of service in their current position and is designed to have an employee's salary be at least at the midpoint in their 8th year in position. Now, what does that Compa ratio model look like? And again, it's just a relative positioning of salaries to the midpoint. And each individual year along a pay grade range has a value. And what you're looking at in that years and CR model is each year, based on employment in their current position, the formula is looking at where that employee's salary is and making a recommendation that based on time and position, it be placed at that relative position until in the 8th year, their salary is at minimum. So that's what that Compa ratio model looks like. It's just a value placement along the pay grade range in relation to time in position. So your average pay grade range is about 3.5% above the average of those other local governments. And from that third bar graph that we looked at, you saw that there were a considerable number of employees whose salaries were to the upper end of your pay grade range. So when the Compa ratio model then looks at the new pay grade ranges, looks at an employee's time and position, it then takes a look at the pay grade range and says that their salary should be here. It then takes a look at where the employee's salary currently is. And if it's below that mark, the employee would get an increase to move to that point. If the employee's salary is already above that recommended spot, the employee would not receive an increase from this study. So what you're looking at is if you if you adopt and implement the recommendations, the total salaries cost increases would be $11,248. That second number you're looking at is 27%, which represents the typical payroll, associated costs, FICA, retirement, 401k. So there'll be a total implementation cost of $14,173. Any questions about the study? That was a very quick overview of, again, about 6 months worth of work. But in the study, there were a number of positions that we made recommendations regarding position title changes. And those do not appear on any of the slides, but in buildings and grounds, I'm recommending that the position of building maintenance specialist be changed to building maintenance crew leader. I'm also recommending that the current position of senior facility maintenance specialist be changed to facilities maintenance crew leader. In finance, I'm recommending the current position of administrative specialist be changed to senior accounting technician. In planning, you have one generic title for building inspectors. My recommendation is to change the titles so that they are in alignment with the recognized titles from Department of Insurance. Those will be building inspectors 1, 2, and 3. So currently, you do recognize a building inspector's levels of certification, but it's a horizontal movement across the current pay grade range. And they're still, each of them are called without regard to certification level, they're called building inspectors. So my recommendation is the creation of building inspector 1, 2, and 3, each of those being in different pay grades. And in that same vein, the recommendation for code enforcement officer would also include a code enforcement officer 1 and code enforcement officer 2 level. And that's a creation of a career ladder for those positions. In the police department, my recommendation is for the current titled position of office assistant to become administrative support specialist. And in the water plant, the current title of senior utility maintenance technician be changed to utility maintenance crew leader. And those are contained in the data that Debbie and Charlene have. I don't have those as part of tonight's presentation. So workforce analysis. Workforce or staffing analysis is primarily a subjective exercise. There are lots of organizations, associations, a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about how to determine staffing levels. I think in your analysis, we utilized most of those before we arrived at the recommendations that we'll take a look at. But just like the pay and class study, I had to have the involvement of staff, department directors, organizational charts. So we took a complete review of organizational charts, positions, discussions with department directors, just analyzing every bit of information that we could about each of your positions. We then collected all of that same information from those same other local governments used in your paying class study. And then we started looking at how best to use all of that data, knowing that there were any number of models that we could have used. Association of Chiefs of Police have a preferred method of determining that, as do fire, as do information technology, as do water and wastewater plant folks. So there's any number of organizations out there that support a different way of looking at it. So we gathered all of that information. We utilized all of that information. So I've three categories that we'll take a look at. The first category that you're looking at is an analysis of those departments that you see on this slide where we are making no recommendations regarding staffing, increases, modifications, changes. And what we're doing is looking at current and up to a 3 to 5 year period of time. So in this first group that we're looking at, we're recommending that no staffing changes are recommended. Second group, we are making recommendations that currently there are no staffing changes with caveats. And those are fire, that's MIS, Management Information Services, Ocean Rescue. These are three groups that are right on the threshold of yes or no, supported, not supported. Most of those primarily are on this list, waiting to see what your population growth continues to be, what the service demands continue to be. And again, for the moment, we're recommending no change, but those are in a position that next fiscal year, or certainly within that 3 to 5 year period of time, there probably will be justification for some organizational change. Now, the ones that we are making recommendations for changes include buildings and grounds, police, and public services. So for buildings and grounds, currently there's 1.5. You've got a half-time employee that spends time in buildings and grounds, and then half of their time over in solid waste. So a recommendation here is that half-time part of that employee's salary be assigned to buildings and grounds. And then when we get to public services, we'll talk about that other half. But here we're making a recommendation of the increase of a half full-time equivalent position. For police, and our recommendation is not for an immediate increase, but certainly within the next 3 to 5 years or sooner, again, depending on population, service demand, and all of the service expectations that you would have. But utilizing all of the data available to us, we're recommending that in the next 3 to 5 year period, that the police department increase staffing by 3 additional officers. Public services, looks like a whole lot of stuff's going on there, but one of those is that half-time position working over in buildings and grounds, then becomes a full-time position in public services. And then, and I'm going to have to move so I can read. The first thing is the reclassification of a current senior utility customer service representative to become a mapping and locating coordinator. Then when that happens, then a recommendation would be to add and employ a new customer service representative who would assume the front desk position that the current senior utility customer service rep has. Next one is add and employ a new locator utility maintenance technician for the water systems. And then modify the construction inspector utility locator activities and funding to be a floater kind of position. And most of what you're looking at here is the increase in staffing, but the ability to cover as many bases as the department needs to cover. And I'm sorry, I apologize for my typo down at the bottom. Add and employ one solid waste equipment operator to address some of the demand for solid waste drivers, where depending on seasonal activity, you've got a department director and a supervisor operating equipment. Now, this is not the addition of 3 or 4 new people. One of my recommendations is you currently have 2 temporary employees trying to help cover some of the bases here, and that those 2 current temporary employees become full-time employees. And so really, we're only talking about the addition of maybe 1.5 positions for this department. So with all of that said, again, that was a very quick overview. I have submitted to Debbie and Charlene 3 different reports. One of those reports is specific to the pay and class study. One of them is specific to the staffing study. And the third one is just all of the backup supporting information for the staffing part of your study. So I thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much.
Questions, comments? I want to start with a comment. This, Mr. Hill, is something that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, that the average Caldwell Hills employee has a 12.2 average year of employment here in the town, which was double the state average of what you've seen in the rest of North Carolina.
Yes.
And I think, Debbie, that is a real testament to your leadership in your role, as well as you, Charlene, and all our department heads, that you've created a culture where people, it's not a job, it's a career. And people, when they come here, they stay. So that's something that I'm proud of, and I know this board is too. So thank you very much.
Well, Mayor,
I appreciate those comments that Mr. Hill stated. That's all goes back to the board.
Yeah.
Your willingness to allow us to be able to implement things that make it a better place to be and a better place to work. And for that, we thank you all.
Questions? There's a lot to take in. Yeah, and it's our first time seeing it too, so we're The wheels are spinning up here. What percentage of KDH employees participated in the initial study, filled out the 12-page questionnaire and got that to you? Was it 100%, 80%? Do we know how many got there?
It was right at 100.
Right at
Oh, yeah.
100%. So everybody had a chance to
Yes.
tell their story and be
Yes.
part of this process. What is the normal, this kind of reminds me of the same process we use for our land use plan, roughly 10 years. How often do you recommend a municipality or county government complete a manpower study?
We are beginning over the last 5 years to work with an increasing number of local governments annually. And that's not a complete look at the entire workforce each year. Depending on the size of the local government, we look at 1/3 of the workforce each year. So what that does is establish a schedule of each position, each department's position gets reviewed at least once every third year. So that's a long answer. The question is, it shouldn't go further than 3 or 4 years.
My question, is this the first time the department heads are seeing it as well? Okay. Will there be opportunity for them to weigh in?
Sure. There's been conversation.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
Put together.
Right.
The report.
Okay.
One question I had was, in this whole scheme of things, was it taken into consideration the higher cost of living here in this area compared to other areas? Our cost of living is high.
It is. And yes, we did look at that.
You did?
But also always have to be careful with that. Because is it the cost of living where I work or the cost of living where I live? So from that one slide, you could tell that all of those were pretty close geographic local governments. So the cost of living would fluctuate a little bit, but not greatly within that particular group.
And then one other question that I had was, our fire department relies on volunteers. They're a big part of it as far as delivering the service. My understanding is we're seeing a decrease in volunteers. Was that taken into consideration, and the additional workload on the permanent employees?
Yes, and that actually is in my detailed report, discussion about the lack of available volunteers. And that's one of the issues that brought the fire department to that second group. And again, that second group is right on the threshold. It wouldn't take much to get those moved to that last grouping.
I know their workload, number of calls has increased quite a bit, and there's not been any additions in the fire department. So I think that's something during the budget and so forth that we really need to look at closely. I think we're at a point we maybe need to add some people. That's just my opinion. We all know that we work very hard for retention, and we try to make sure that our employees are comfortable and we retain them. And I think that this probably shows that. I think we need to consider staying in that format. That's all I have right now, anyhow.
It was one of your middle slides. How many grades do the town, pay grades the town currently have versus what you recommend us adopting?
I did increase the number of pay grades. And part of that was because of some of those additional classifications like building inspectors. So right now, maybe you can see on the left side, you currently go from grade 3 to 5, so 20, 22 grades. And then my recommendation would be to go from a new grade 10 to grade 40. So you're increasing 25 to, or 23 to 39.
In the spirit of employee retention, especially for our more tenured folks, would having more pay grades up to 30 here allow those people to, once they, it could be a little demoralizing to work 10, 12 years, hit the cap. Oh, well, can't make any more. It's just a chance to kind of give those people a little more movement at the top to kind of know that there's something more to get and strive for.
The recommendation to extend your range to 60% was specific to your question.
Yeah.
Additional 5% more of room there. But the addition of pay grade ranges provides for the future platform to look at positions perhaps more often than they have been. And then some of the reclassifications that we've made recommendations to then would have opportunities to move to a newer, higher pay grade. And there would not be the compression that exists in your current grade ranges. So there would be that greater opportunity to, and I'm just making this up, administrative assistant 1, administrative assistant 2, administrative assistant 3, and those then could be those 3 different pay grades. In your current pay grade range, you would have less opportunity to slot those kinds of positions in without creating some compression.
Like the example you used for code enforcement, wanting
Yes.
to. Yes.
Yes.
And I appreciate the recognition of the Public Works Department,
Mm-hmm.
how they split their jobs. And, you know, those guys I mean, I've seen Steve in the ditches digging, you know, so they do whatever it takes to get it done. And I appreciate the recognition of that because they all do great.
A lot of cross training.
Yeah.
Well, there is a request for a motion. If anybody would like to make that, or any further discussion?
I'll make that motion with the caveat that the department heads are okay with it, with it as well, because I think that's really the important part here. I mean, this work is important, but you know, and I know obviously things can change, you know, but
So I'll second that motion.
Okay. Caveat noted.
So noted.
Caveat's like the word of the night, I think. It's come up a few
I was
times.
going to say, yeah.
Very, very impressive.
Yes, sir,
Your
Mr.
study.
Hill. Thank you.
Thank you so
Quite
much.
the presentation.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Town manager, any ongoing business this evening?
No, sir.
New business?
No, sir.
Committee reports?
None here.
Anything?
Nothing from me, sir.
No? All right. Commissioner's agenda.
Nothing here, sir.
Well, we're picking up the pace. Okay. Under mayor's agenda, if I can find my form. Two things here. This, under item 1, under mayor's agenda, resolutions and proclamations. Resolution A, I'd like to propose a resolution in opposition of Senate Bill 257, ferry toll sections 43.15A and 43.15B to all ferry tolls in North Carolina. I really am glad that we're addressing this now. I'm not a fan of putting tolls on our ferries. I don't think anybody is. Growing up in East North Carolina, it's just, that's a no-no.
Highway's a highway.
Yes, sir. Our second proclamation is designating May 15th, 2025 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and May 17th, 11th through 17th, 2025 as Police Week, and C, proclamation declaring May 4th through 10th, 2025 as Hurricane Preparedness Month. We have three proclamations before us, and I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
The discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. And before we move on, one more thing. I'd like to take a moment, Meredith, if you could pull up the picture of our new Heyman Street Beach Access Walkover. Really looks great. It's nice to, of all the parking we have on Heyman, to have this resource to help people access the beach easier.
Super job.
And it
Super
went
job.
up fast. I mean, that was a quick job, and it's right on time for the
Going
season.
about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Wow.
Well, very nice work, and I'm happy to have that there.
And we'll thank the Division of Coastal Management for their generous grant that helped us build this access.
Thank you for getting the grant.
Well,
Yes.
all right. Moving on, town manager agenda, town attorney.
I have nothing unless you guys have something for me. But I have nothing to add. No.
We haven't got to public forum yet, so we'll see. Consent agenda.
Yes, sir. This evening, we have the minutes from the April 14th, 2025. A budget amendment to record revenues and associate expenditures for the clear above financial statements. This is software that is in accordance with GASB 96. We have our annual partnership report from the YMCA. Approval of the consent agenda will approve the board's approval and authorization for the town manager to enter into contract with Coastal Protection Engineering of North Carolina for the upcoming 2027 beach nourishment project. Just to record the consensus that we received from the Board of Commissioners approving staff to utilize Mark III Quorum to act as our broker for healthcare and to select the North Carolina Blue Cross preferred provider organization for this. Approval of the consent agenda will record your actions in the minutes. I'd like to thank you for that. It allowed for Charlene and her team to continue pushing through with that and getting that finalized as we come up into the end of June when it will begin July 1. So thank you very much. And then lastly, to schedule a public hearing. This is a zoning amendment for residential low setbacks. It amends the double frontage setback for lots 5,000 square feet or less. Specifically, additionally, the amendment includes properties that abut Scott and Herring Street from double frontage requirements, since these right-of-ways are designated as future greenways and not improvement streets. Recommend the public hearing be set for May 28th, 6 p.m. Approval of the consent agenda would do that, and the motion would be in order.
And I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 3A. I think we need to pull that out and have it during our budget workshop if it's for approval of funds.
No, it's your.
Just a report?
Report.
Okay.
We do have to pull those out, as you recall from last year.
Yeah.
Because one of our board members works for one of our partners.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if it was for approval of the request.
No,
If
sir,
it,
it's for
if it
them
was, I
to-
want to exclude it and hold it out for the budget workshop.
I understand, but no, it's just them simply reporting to you what they did with those
Okay.
funds. for this past
So
year.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All right.
Take a brief break. Take a brief break.
Before we move on to our public forum, we're going to pause the meeting and take a 5-minute break. You take a motion for that or just?
Just scatter.
Yeah, I need to refill my sippy cup. So.
Some more coffee.
Okay.
Come on, Meredith.
My bad. We were talking about Haman.
Pardon?
Gavel.
Gavel.
All right, moving on to our next item of business is public forum. Our Board of Commissioners is committed to our citizens and getting feedback. We set aside 2 public forums a year with a slightly different than our public comment periods at our regular meetings. Public forum gives the board an opportunity to speak casually with the public on town issues raised from the floor. I'll open the forum up for comment. Much more casual. We're not going to time you for 3 minutes or 5. We do ask you topics that would be related to the town, but if anybody would like to speak, now is the time to do so.
Figured our public works director would have something because he brought the horsepower with him tonight with Derek. Yeah.
I can feel some time.
We got it.
No, you got your work cut out for you. I've seen what they've been loading out on the streets and everything. They got loads out there.
How much mulch is being picked up at the recycling plant and other spots in town? The last few, I go every Saturday morning, and I see more trailers that seems utilizing that resource. Do we track how much is taken, or how does that go?
Steve, could you please go to the podium so people who are streaming can also hear you?
Yeah. Identify yourself.
Steve Albright, Public Services Director. Yes, it is being used. I would agree with that. But the volume of limbs we've been taking in over the last 5 years, it always used to be kind of a balance where we would actually have a month or so between, we would run out. The mulch pile would be empty and we would have to wait for the grind and for it to get windrowed and brought up to temperature. And then we would start giving it away again. The last 5 years we've had an abundance, and last year's mulch is still there. And so please, if you see people, tell them it's there, spread the word, and have them get all they want. But yeah, so it's not in a scarce supply yet.
How many sites do we have?
Well, we've got the Monday through Saturday
That's probably work.
at Public Works, and you can get loaded there. We do have the backhoe there. Most times, depending on staffing, we can load your trailer. And then at Aviation is the self-serve pile.
Right. So we only have those 2 locations.
Correct.
Is there any place we could do it further north as well?
I don't know. We can certainly,
Or are we just asking for trouble?
I don't know. We'll look into it.
I mean, it might make it more convenient for people up on the northern end. Just a thought. Might be harder to establish that.
Well, it's a nice resource to have for anyone really who wants to use it.
It is.
So, thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
Sunday
that.
morning, 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. I've seen
Yeah.
people, all hours, all times in there.
We were there at like 8:30 or 9, like headlamps.
You get a better disguise.
Seriously.
Any other questions, comments, anything related to the public forum? Seeing none, I will close this public forum and I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you all.